Hi, everybody, and welcome to our Wednesday webinar series. It's great to have you here. And as you know, it's a different day than our usual first and third Wednesdays. So thanks for joining us at the end of the month here for Dan's presentation. I want to start off real quick by sharing my screen again and sharing a video that Maine Lakes made last summer with Taylor Walker, a great filmmaker who worked with us, and stars Jason. The star of the show is Jason Mitchell, who is works for the Penobscot Nation. So bear with me. I think people are still joining, so I think it's a good time to jump in and show this. It's just I think it's 3 minutes long, not quite 3 minutes. Except I always forget you have to share your sound. All right, so hopefully you can see that. Dan, do you see that, the video?
No, I don't.
All right, let me try one more time. Share screen. Share screen. All right, how about that?
There you go.
All right, and hopefully if it doesn't have sound, let me know.
What I enjoy most about being on the water is that it's my connection not only to the water, but to my ancestors as well. That passion motivates me on a daily basis to go out and do my job and do the best that I can for all generations to come. One of our biggest threats to water quality is non-point source pollution, stormwater runoff. We did some work out in Alder Stream Township, which is tribal trust land, the mountain trails out there, to prevent ATVs from crossing directly into stream beds. By constructing bridges to keep these machines out of the water, we prevent erosion and we prevent nutrients from being loaded into the streams, which in turn would empty into the lakes and ponds up there. And over time, we're able to track trends to make sure that our water bodies are staying clean. We cannot live without water. We are connected to the environment, whether it's the woods or the water, and that if we don't take care of the woods and the water, then it won't take care of us. And once it's gone, once it's been damaged, it's very difficult to get it back to a healthy state. I hope in the future other generations catch on to that, and it goes far beyond tribal communities, because we're just a few of the many, Getting involved can be as simple as not mowing your grass to the water's edge, leaving a buffer strip for stormwater to allow that stormwater to slow down and be absorbed by the ground. And I believe that there is a grassroots movement, and that if we all work together, then we can achieve a common goal, which is clean water. Water is life, and without clean water, there is no life.
So thanks for watching that, and thanks to Jason Mitchell and the tribes for helping us make that video to share our message about lake and water quality and how important it is. Let me just go back to my slides here really quick. I don't have too much to show you before I pass it over to Dan, but let's see. Let's see, oops. someday I'll figure out how to get this right. Don't know when. Okay. All right, Dan or Drew, can you see the Zoom housekeeping slide? I'm hoping you say yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, so for those of you joining us, you probably know the drill, that you're all on mute, and you can use the chat for general information if you want to just say hello to everybody, tell us where you're from, what lake you're on, and then the Q&A function for questions for the speaker would be great. And then if you're having any trouble with the speaker picture overlaying the slides, you can escape out of full screen mode by hitting the little sort of cross or the escape. And then you can email mladmin@lakes.me if you have any questions, any technical problems. So just quickly to frame this presentation, the theme of our 2022 conference, Maine Lakes Conference, sadly virtual once again, is the Clean Water Act. So I just put up this slide to remind us all what things look like in 1972. It did not look good, particularly the things on the right, the industrial pollution in particular into Maine's rivers was not in a good place. And then the one on the left is the Cuyahoga River in Ohio, the one that caught fire. So, this is what really spurred the Clean Water Act on. And I just want to make a quick mention about Section 319 grants, which Dan will talk about more, and the tribes and how the tribes use those Section 319 funds. But it really wasn't until 1987 that amendments were made to the Clean Water Act that created the Section 319 program. It brings a lot of money into states and to tribes to work on non-point source pollution. So the prior slide I showed was point sources of pollution. The EPA really recognized and acted in 1987 to recognize that there were really important sources of pollution into our lakes and water bodies, and they're from non-point sources. So non-point sources being diffuse, smaller sources of pollution from homes, from driveways and other impervious surfaces, from fertilizer, pet waste, farm operations, those kinds of things. They're not direct discharges, but they make a big difference. And that's what the Section 319 grants started doing in 1987. So that's my connection to the Clean Water Act, and it's great to have Dan here today to talk about it a little bit more. Dan is, oops, one more thing here. All right, so Dan, welcome and thanks for being here. I'll just do a very short introduction so that we can make the most of your time. But Dan's been with the Penobscot Nation for almost 30 years, and he is currently the Water Resources Program Manager. He is in charge of their sampling, and hopefully you got a chance to read his full bio in the slideshows that preceded the when we started the talk. But I'll let his talk speak for him, for his experience. When you hear about what he has done and what he does for the Penobscot Nation, you'll get how much experience he has. But he has experience collecting water samples, analyzing in the lab. He looks at dioxins, PCBs, mercury, all kinds of things that he's looking at, toxic contaminants in the water. He also works on algal blooms and excess nutrients in the water. He's worked on dam removal. He's looked at aquatic insects and again, assessing non-point source pollution is one of the things he does. One of the main things he does within his role as Water Resource Manager. So with that short introduction, I'll pass it on to you, Dan. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Sue.
You should be able to share your screen. Yep, looks good.
Be able to see it?
Yeah, it's not in slideshow mode yet. It's got the preview on the left.
How about now?
Nope, still just still the previews and the still in like preview mode.
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
Did you
Well,
click the
let
little
me-
slide at the bottom there?
let me try again.
Yeah. I swear, no matter how much we do this, we still it still seems like we are still learning. Now it's a black screen.
Huh. Well, I don't know what's going on.
I don't know, that'll work. I mean, I think it's plenty big on my screen.
Well, I guess that's what we'll have to go with. I'm not sure why it's doing that. Okay, so thank you for the opportunity to present here today. I'm just going to kind of give you a little bit of an overview of Penobscot Nation Water Quality Program, a little bit of a history. I'll touch on some things related to the work that we do, you know, on the reservation, but I'm primarily going to focus on the things that we do related to water quality and its protection on the trust land, lakes and ponds that the tribe has. So the Penobscot Nation Reservation is basically the Penobscot River, beginning in Old Town and traveling upstream. Do you see the second slide? Does it show a picture of the river?
No, we're still on the first slide.
Wow.
Sorry, I don't know. Yeah, there it goes.
Okay,
mean,
I'll just have to.
I guess you'll have to do it that way.
Okay. So the Penobscot River is very precious and sacred. It's the lifeblood of the Penobscot tribe.
Sorry, Dan, so just sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
There is a little red box on it that says slideshow and resume slideshow. I didn't know if up at the top, like under, yeah, right there. Like if you do resume slideshow, then hit this. I just didn't know that. Okay, no worries. We'll just keep it the way it is.
Is that working? No.
No, same. That's okay. I
Oh,
think you just,
okay.
yeah, just advance through the, sorry.
So this map here just shows the location of where Penobscot Nation's tribal lands are located. So I mentioned where the reservation is, but the tribe also has trust lands that are scattered throughout Maine, and those are the areas that are depicted in red, and also fee lands, which are located, you know, scattered around the state. But most of what we have are the trust lands. And those are lands that the tribe acquired after the Settlement Act, where the tribe gave up about 2/3 of the state of Maine. And basically there was a process put in place through the Settlement Act to reacquire some lands. And so some of these areas in red are those lands. So here, just we'll kind of zoom in a little bit larger. So the trust lands, we have just under 100,000 acres of trust land right now. And the reservation and trust lands are very important to the tribe. That is because they use them for sustenance. They use them for collecting fish, which they have sustenance fishing rights for hunting, for transportation. And you know, the Penobscot River is basically historically was the I-95 for the tribe, and that was how they accessed the foods. And the other thing that it was used for was for gathering of the materials that are used for making things such as birch bark canoes, baskets, which are important as an income source for many tribal members, for gathering food such as fiddlehead ferns. And so so the tribe uses both the reservation and the trust lands for carrying out these practices. So we have within the Department of Natural Resources, we have, this slide's a little bit outdated, but we have a bunch of different programs. We have wildlife, water resources, GIS, forestry, conservation law enforcement, fisheries, brownfields program, air quality. And so all those programs work together for protecting and managing the tribal resources. So the mission of our water resources program is to protect, enhance, and restore water quality and aquatic resources and related aquatic ecosystems of the nation's territories, so that tribal members may fully carry out tribal traditional cultural practices and life ways. So it's important to note that, you know, the tribe uses waters and the resources contained within them and adjacent to them in different ways than the general public does. Like when the tribe goes, when tribal citizens go out fishing, you know, it's not recreational fishing, it's fishing for sustenance. And it's an important link to their culture. So now I want to talk a little bit about some of the water quality monitoring that we do. So this here is the sites that we have on the Penobscot River. So we have approximately 90 sites that are located within the Penobscot, the east and west branches and tributaries that come into them. And we use those to, you know, determine, you know, clean and healthy reference conditions, to look at the effect of discharges, hydroelectric dam impoundments, non-point source pollution, and then also for specific projects such as the Penobscot River Restoration Project, where we removed dams. We studied the before and after of effects of that. This work basically entails sampling our river and tributary sites once every 1 to 2 weeks for all these different parameters that are listed here on the screen. We have a cooperative agreement between the tribe and the Maine DEP. So we largely carry out the monitoring for the Penobscot River Basin. We share those data with Maine DEP, which are used in their integrated water quality assessment reports and in 303D reporting. And based on data that we've collected, probably now, you know, several hundred miles have been of stream and river have been upgraded based on data that we've collected. We also use this data for helping to locate and report spills, releases, and violations that we provide to DEP. We share a lot of technical and logistical assistance back and forth. And we've been told by DEP that we're the largest contributor of water quality data in the state. So we use these data for a wide variety of things, such as developing health advisories for tribal members or citizens, determining whether water quality standards are being attained. When we evaluate discharge licenses and comment on those, we use our data to help determine whether they're in compliance, whether additional limits are warranted, and maybe we would recommend process changes. We also use it in dam relicensing proceedings, assessing spills and releases, and we also share our data to EPA through the Water Quality Exchange Network. So moving on to lakes. So we have 11 lakes that are scattered throughout the tribe's trust lands. We have a baseline program where we visit these sites, about 24 sites, generally about 3 to 4 times per year is kind of our goal on sort of through the May through October period of time. And we collect things such as DO and temperature profiles, pH, alkalinity, bacteria, transparency from Secchi disk. And we do a lot of work on total phosphorus and chlorophyll A using integrated vertical cores. And we usually use things such as like the deep hole of the lake, locations where there might be potential pollution sources. We also do intensive lake sampling. So because we're not able to get enough data by just going out of all the places that we have to monitor, we do like a 4 to 5 year rotational basis where we'll take 2 or 3 lakes and we'll sample them twice a month from June through October, collect the same kind of data that I previously described. And that sampling gives us more, a lot more data, and the design is to help us provide adequate data for determining a trophic status index and trends, so we can determine what's going on in those water bodies. A lot of these places are pretty remote. They are accessed by, maybe taking an ATV partway in and then having a canoe stashed in the woods that we then go out there to. And then we also have other places that, that are a little bit larger, like South Branch Lake, Matagamon Lake, where we, put a pretty large boat in and conditions can get pretty rough. And then we go out and do our water quality monitoring. We have our own water quality laboratory. Most of the parameters that we are sampling that we do are analyzed in our own lab, with the exception right now of chlorophyll and total phosphorus. We do contract that out. So one of the other things that we do is we look at contaminants that are found in fish. That tells us something about the potential impacts on human health, ecological health, and the impacts on tribal sustenance rights and the tribe's culture. So I'm going to get into a study that we're just wrapping up here shortly on mercury that from our trust lands that we've carried out over the last couple of years. So the reason we're doing this work is that the culture and traditions and the health of the Penobscot tribal members are inextricably tied to the environment of the reservation and trust lands. Currently, there are health advisories in place that limit the consumption of fish and some wildlife from reservation waters, because there's things such as dioxins, furans, PCBs, mercury, that are largely from point source industrial discharges, either historically or ongoing now. So our question was, are tribal members turning to the trust land lakes and ponds that are a lot more remote and don't have any sort of point source discharges into them? Are they turning to those places to get their fish for consumption? We have very limited data on mercury levels in fish from these lakes and ponds. And a lot of that data was very outdated, very small sample sizes, limited on number of species that we had looked at. So we really need to have data on mercury levels found in these fish to advise tribal community members about fish consumption. So our approach was, we created this Tribal Mercury Advisory Committee, which is comprised of kind of a wide spattering of different folks within the tribe, some of our natural resource people. We had tribal guides, cultural experts, some elders, our health department, and we used that to help kind of guide what we were going to sample and where we were going to sample. And so the goal was to collect fish from up to 8 lakes and ponds, somewhere in the vicinity of 8 fish species, try to get basically what fish species were in those water bodies that were being used, try to get 8 fish per species per water body, during each sampling period. We also were trying to do a little work on crayfish if we could find them. The goal was to target approximately 500 samples and then to process, collect the data and measurements from these samples. We were able to work an arrangement out with the University of Maine Sawyer Environmental Research Laboratory and also Diane Kopek, who's with the Mitchell Center and a real mercury expert. We were able to get reduced cost on analyzing the mercury at that laboratory. So we basically used the equipment. They taught us how to use it and provided some oversight to make sure that we were doing it properly. And we were able to, that also allowed us to develop tribal capacity. And then we were looking to evaluate these findings in relation to different pond and watershed characteristics, and then to use the data for communicating to the tribal public, and also to hopefully develop a long-term monitoring program for mercury from these waters. So just a few pictures of the collections of some of the fish and also some of the analysis. So right now we're wrapping up the statistical analyses to try to determine if there are water body species differences, whether relationships between mercury concentration and fish length, comparing the same species across water bodies, look at whether or not there are watershed characteristics associated with those lakes and ponds that might be factors in affecting mercury concentrations. So we will be wrapping that up and then writing the report, and we'll be using the data to update these wild fish brochures that we have, that we use to communicate information about safe consumption of wild foods to our tribal community. And we'll also do presentations and community forum to get that word out about that. So now moving on to our non-point source management program. Basically this involves assessing and identifying the different non-point sources of pollution. And so we have a non-point source assessment and we have a management plan. And then we use that to help kind of prioritize and target how we're going to address the non-point source pollution by installing BMPs on tribal lands, and also to do a lot of education to reach out both to the tribal community as well as other people. So this here is a list of the different types of non-point source, or the different categories that we have. Most of our lands are forested, and so we have a lot of silvicultural practices going on that involve road construction and maintenance, stream crossings. We also, on the reservation, we have quite a bit of bank modification, removal of riparian vegetation due to various practices, and also due to some of the hydroelectric dams. Land development, recreational activities, a really big one, particularly ATVs, and then land disposal such as on-site wastewater. So we do a lot of this work using Clean Water Act 319 funding. There are two different programs that we're able to access. There's a base program, which is not a lot of money, but basically we can do some small projects, and it allows us to have a non-point source coordinator, who is Jason Mitchell, who is featured in that video that was shown. And then also we can apply for competitive tribal grants. And those are more, a lot more money to them for carrying out bigger projects. So we're able to do this. So we have treatment as a state, which means the tribe doesn't have to go through this Maine DEP's 319 program. That means that we can use our own water quality goals, standards, and priorities, and we can focus on preventing degradation of waters instead of trying to fix places that might already be heavily impaired. we would do that as well, but a lot of what we're doing is more focused on prevention, which is a lot more cost effective. We also use this money to help leverage other non-point source related projects, such as in some cases, the hydroelectric licensee. We also use some funds by NRCS for installing BMPs, and largely that's through the NRCS EQUIP program. So I'm going to give you some examples of some of our non-point source projects. So we have a lot of dirt roads, gravel roads, and culverts being clogged by beavers is a very big issue. It's not really the beavers' fault, it's just what they do. And the problem becomes those culverts get clogged up, the water floods the road, washes the road out, puts all that material into the streams and then downstream into the lakes and ponds, and again provides nutrients. So we install these beaver deceivers. We have one of the nation, probably the world's foremost expert on developing these. That we used to be an employee here at Penobscot Nation, and we have him come in every year and work on putting these in place in various locations where they're needed. On our lakes and ponds, we've also done quite a bit of work on some of our primitive boat landings. So the photo here shows how we get a lot of erosion and sedimentation that goes into the lake or the ponds through these small boat landings. And we've installed various BMPs to help prevent the erosion and to filter and divert the stormwater off of there. So this is the same boat landing, just before and then after. One thing we really like to use too, if it's an area that's not getting plowed, are these rubber flexible water bars, which do a really good job of directing the water off and into a place where it can be filtered off. I'm going to, in the interest of time, I'm just going to kind of zip through some of these pretty quickly. We do quite a bit of work on bank stabilization. This is a stream that there was a road right beside it, and it's just very poorly sited road that the tribe acquired this, and basically we went in and retired the road and stabilized that bank. The photo on the right hand side shows what it looked like a few years after. We've done a lot of work on ATV, things to do with ATVs. So we, as Jason mentioned in his the video, we have a lot of situations where people are using ATVs on tribal lands, and they seem to really like to just drive through the streams instead of taking trails. So we've gone in and rerouted trails away from streams where we could, and then in other places where we had to have a stream crossing, we would install these bridges and make them of a size that vehicles couldn't go over on, but just ATVs could. And that's really been effective for preventing erosion and sedimentation from getting into those streams and the downstream lakes and ponds. And some of these are really sensitive areas, high elevation sensitive places. We also do a lot of work on putting in, culverts, water bars, and ditching, stabilizing trails by vegetating them, and trying to direct water into more suitable areas. We have quite a few places where we have worked on replacing failed culverts or undersized culverts and bridges to because they wash out, they cause a lot of sedimentation. So we go in and replace those. In most cases, we're replacing them with properly sized bridges as opposed to culverts. And so those, and also in association with that, installing culverts, ditching, road shaping. One of the big things about these bridges is it really is great for improving connectivity for aquatic life, particularly for anadromous migratory fish. Here's some work up at Mattagamon Lake. This is a camp road that accesses the Boy Scout High Adventure Camp, and also a bunch of privately owned camps on tribal and non-tribal land. And you can see that just the road was just a real mess. I mean, it was just really rutted up badly. Culverts failed, no ditching because it wasn't designed properly. In the photo in the bottom left-hand corner there, you can see the water is running off, and that light area in the background is the lake. So it's in really close proximity to, this whole road runs in close proximity to the lake. So it's really important for us to do something about this. And this is shortly after installation of some different road BMPs. So we, cut things back a little bit, raise the road up significantly, put in culverts, ditches. You don't see it now because these photos were taken, just shortly after construction, but those areas now are all vegetated. There's lots of grass growing there. We also installed some of these retention areas for the water to run off where it was close to the lake, where the water would be able to go into these settling ditches or settling areas and filter out before any of the water makes it into the lakes. Another ATV situation. This is a remote pond, high elevation out in western Maine. And folks were just driving ATVs right to the shore of the pond. In some cases, you could see they were driving out into the pond, into the shallow of the pond. And this is really sensitive vegetation, and a small pond that would be really vulnerable to the water quality impacts and sedimentation that were occurring. So we went in there, put a barrier up to prevent the ATVs from being able to get to the pond. This was the first barrier. We put something up a little bit more significant later on. And then, vegetated that. We kind of took the ruts out, seeded, mulched, and revegetated the whole area. And the photos on the right, the top shows like a short time after it was done. And the photo on the bottom right is what it looks like now. So it's really recovered nicely. We also do a lot of work on doing outreach and education. So one example of that is a series of different types of trainings that we've done for municipal highway road crews, where we have an engineer come in and work with them to teach them about basically engineering for non-engineering, to work on things such as culverts issues and designs, learning about water, figuring out watershed size, how big culverts and ditching and such needs to be, different road stabilization methods and designs, turnouts and buffers. And it's been really well received. People don't have to pay for it. And we've had a lot of municipalities send their road crews here and to these various trainings. They also get certification through Maine DEP's, like their non-point source program. I can't remember. It's like erosion control or something like that. I forget the exact name of it. We've also done a lot of education outreach with the general public and the tribal public. Here's just an example of us doing some classes on using the Enviroscape watershed model. We've developed some pretty cool games. This here is a ramp that teaches people about how water picks up pollution and sediment as it travels over the landscape and goes into the water. So it's a little bit like in the old days, David Letterman had his Velcro suit. Well, this is a suit that has Velcro all over it. All these different colored pieces that are on the ramp are supposed to be particles of pollution, and they roll down the ramp and they pick up all that material with them and then roll into the into what's supposed to be the water at the bottom. So the idea is, water is carrying this pollution to the, our raindrops is carrying this water to to the pond. And then we put in these other Velcro strips, those big wide white ones, and those mimic a riparian buffer zone. So as that water travels through down the ramp and they hit those Velcro strips, it pulls the particles of pollution off. Another activity you had, we call it the non-point source dunk tank. People try to dunk our natural resources director here by throwing, you know, it's a typical dunk tank, but what we did is we put up a board with a picture of a good riparian buffer strip in front of it with just a small hole. So the ball is the water trying to travel through that buffer zone. And he stayed dry when we had the buffer strip in place, but when we would take the board down, he went swimming quite often. And the last thing I'd like to just mention is some work that we've been doing on restoring aquatic life connectivity, and particularly with respect to alewives. We have been doing a lot of work in association with the Penobscot River Restoration Project, which took out dams in the main stem of the Penobscot. Well, once the fish are able to travel up through there, they then need to make it to their spawning areas. So we have removed some small dams and instead replace them with nature-like fishways. And so there's a couple examples here of what those look like. And so these just essentially, this is right after they were done, but they essentially just look like a natural stream. But these were engineered, and there's a lot of work that went into them, but they provide flow year round so that the fish are able to migrate in and out. And I guess I should also say that, that also ties together with the water quality monitoring work that we do. We do that work. The data are used to help, determine whether the habitat and the conditions are suitable for those fish. And one of the places where we installed these is on Madamascontis Lake on tribal lands. And just a little bit of cultural information for you. Madamascontis and Penobscot means place of many alewives. So those alewives were basically eradicated from that area, but now they're once again returning to that pond and several other ponds around there. And I think I'll just briefly mention that the tribe has its own water quality standards. They haven't been approved by EPA for Clean Water Act purposes, but we do have them under tribal law. We have standards, and those standards are some of them are pretty different than what exists elsewhere. So one of those is that we have different designated uses. So some of those uses include sustenance fishing, which means a higher fish consumption rate is needed in order to protect health of tribal community members. Then we also have cultural and ceremonial uses, which mean that those things need to be protected at the appropriate time of the year and need to be really clean, because people would be coming in contact and through different ways than you necessarily would be if you were just recreating on the water. And then lastly, we have some other places that we have identified as outstanding tribal resource waters that are, sacred or particularly important culturally. And with that, I will take questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Dan. That was the tribes do a ton of work, and it was in our film, but we try, and I don't do a very good job all the time, but we do try to acknowledge that the Wabanaki Penobscots and the general Wabanaki people have taken care of our lakes for a long, long time and have certainly done a better job for many, many, many eons than we have done in recent times. So I always like to, always try to remember to make that, well, other people do land acknowledgements. I think a water acknowledgement is, so it makes sense for Maine Lakes. So
Thank you.
thank you for all the work you do. And really, it's nice. It's great to see those standards, you know, the tribe's really upping those standards for good reason. So I will, let's see if I'm not sure if there's a couple Q&A. So let me see. I think we talked about this yesterday. Somebody would like to know how LD 1626 would impact your ability and or access to assess and remediate water quality. And I'm pretty sure 1626 is the tribal sovereignty bill. Let me look, I can look it up real quick if that person wants to. I just happen to have it open. Yeah, so it's the tribal sovereignty bill. So we talked about that a little bit yesterday or the other day when we were chatting.
Yeah, it would only help. It would, you know, we believe it would be beneficial to allow the tribe to be able to have potentially more access to resources that the tribe could utilize to be able to protect waters, and also you know, more in the way of jurisdiction that would allow potentially, like those water quality standards that I talked about, that those would potentially be able to get approved by EPA, and that the tribe would be able to, you know, be more protective in some waters, you know, particularly really important waters for sustenance fishing and different cultural resources. So I think it would be really beneficial to the tribe to have more control over what goes on, you know, on its lands, and potentially, you know, the effects that come from adjacent uses. Yeah.
And thanks for Margaret, for bringing up LD 1626. And I believe that bill as a divided report and is waiting for a floor vote. So it'll be part of Maine Lakes grassroots activist advocacy to get an alert from that. It had amazing support in the hearing. So that should be coming up for a vote soon. Somebody asked about testing for PFAS in the 11 lakes in the Penobscot River. The tribe is doing that.
Great question. PFAS is, you know, as a lot of people know, has become a really big issue as of late, and not yet. The only thing that we've tested for PFAS so far is we did an anadromous fish study with EPA, looking at fish coming back to the Penobscot River, and we were able to get them to include PFAS and in those analyses. And so we have a little bit of data on PFAS in, I think it's like 7 different species of anadromous fish, and we found it in them. We don't know where it's coming from because these fish are migratory, so we don't know exactly, you know, if it's coming from the Penobscot watershed or when they go out to the ocean, or, you know, what have you. So, but we are hoping to kind of develop a PFAS monitoring strategy to help us identify, you know, places that we should be looking for PFAS. And we got really kind of to make effective use of resources, you really have to kind of figure out what are the potential sources that may cause you to want to look in those places and prioritize, you know, appropriately.
Yeah, it's definitely a huge problem, and but it does look promising in terms of what the state is doing about it in terms of funding research and remediation. So hopefully there'll be some opportunities to search a little bit more.
Yes.
Somebody asked about, did you find crayfish in your surveys, and what species, and why are they important?
Yeah, the crayfish, the reason they were important is they are a food item that would be consumed by tribal people. And also they are a, they're a component of the food chain. And so other species, eat them. We thought they would be easy to find based on some sampling that we did in a couple of our lakes and ponds, and they were in those couple of lakes and ponds, but they weren't in a lot of them. So we don't have very much data on mercury levels in the crayfish, just a handful of them. So hopefully that's something, and I don't know whether it's just the crayfish just weren't in those ponds, or they were just a lot harder to catch. We had to kind of stop looking so hard for them and focus on making sure we could get the fish.
Yeah. Well, my understanding is we only have one. Is it true? I think we only have one species of crayfish in Maine, don't we? Am I remembering that right?
I believe we have more than one. Yeah.
Or maybe one native, and then we have some invaders. I know it's very low compared to other places, but I've only seen a handful of crayfish actually in all my years on lakes. So let's see. Do you have pH standards that are, I guess, I assume that's for water quality testing. And do you have, if you have them, what pH standards do you use?
Yeah, so we're using putting me on the spot here.
Sorry, that's a technical
They are not the same as what EPA or what DEP has been using up until recently. So they are, I don't remember offhand what they are, but they're what DEP's new standards are going to be.
Okay. Well,
so there were changes just recently in the reclassification and associated with the triennial review and reclassification, and so there were proposed changes that I believe made it through committee, but I don't know if they've been voted on yet.
Okay. I was really struck by your education ideas, the ramp and the dunk tank. I mean, what a fantastic way to visualize this very concept that's so difficult often to get across to people. So I loved both of those ideas. And that brings us to this question, which was from somebody: do you work with / educate non-tribal residents along the Penobscot River or other lakes you monitor for water quality, and how do you engage them?
Great question. We do a lot of outreach to schools, so like schools particularly within the Penobscot watershed will go take we've used the dunk tank's a little tough because you have to rent it and all that stuff. But
yeah.
But the ramp and the watershed model and a lot of other curricula that we've developed, we take to schools. And then for we do things like this, we talk in various webinars and just try to get out to the public as much as we can. For the lakes and ponds, some of them are really challenging because there's seasonal folks that live there, and they're there for like a weekend or a week here and there, and so it's really hard to there isn't a central meeting place that you can go to and gather everybody together and reach them all together. So we have developed some brochures and educational materials, which we'll stop by and leave them with people, or trying to develop a mailing list. So we've mailed some of those things to people once we have addresses for them. We have developed an email newsletter, which has information in it that we send out to people, and it'll have information about, nonpoint source and lots of other things that we do.
Great. So changing, one of our Lake Smart, dedicated Lake Smart volunteers made a comment that changing social behavior can be hard. What have you found to be most effective in changing attitudes and behaviors around water quality and all the work you do?
I mean, a lot of where we come from, we face this a lot, right? We have a lot of people that have their view of what the tribe's positions are going to be or something. And a lot of times those are they're not right. You know, they're misaligned. And so we just try to create relationships, you know, get to know people and let them know that, you know, we're not the boogeyman. And also specifically with regard to water quality, you know, we try to, you know, we see people out there that are fishing or paddling or what have you. You know, we try to engage with them. And, you know, a lot of times they're very curious anyways as to what are you doing? And so we take the time to chat with them. And, you know, a lot of times they're there because it's a resource that they feel connected to. And, you know, we help, particularly like with camp owners, for instance, like we try to help them understand, like, it's a beautiful place. You want to be here to look at it. We want to try to keep it that way. So stop mowing right down to the water's edge. You know, here are some things we can do. And in some cases we've, you know, worked with people to help them restore, you know, some vegetation in areas near the water.
Yeah.
You know, but a lot of it's, I think, just sort of relationship building and getting trust.
Yeah. I guess with camp owners, kind of what's the biggest, you mentioned BMPs and, you know, best management practices. What are kind of the biggest, most common BMPs that you all kind of deal with homeowners and camp owners on tribal lands?
Yeah. So, and so what happens with regard to sort of the camp owners and tribal lands, like it might be a pond that has tribal land all around it, but the camp owners are, some of them maybe, you know, tribal members, and some of them are not, because those camps were there prior to the tribe owning that land. And a lot of what we've done with them is just, you know, like for instance, Jason has a camp on Grand Lake Matagamon. He knows everybody on Grand Lake Matagamon, and they know what he does because he just talks to them, you know, befriends them, tries to work with them, explain why we're doing what we're doing. And it's kind of contagious, you know, people start paying attention to it. And, but a lot of those camp owner ones they're challenging to deal with, because like a lot of our work has been more focused on like the roads and the stream crossings and bank stabilization and things like that. So, you know, we try to provide educational materials about, you know, like septic systems or, you know, properly functioning, you know, privies or outhouses, you know, gray water, but it's not really like a regulatory type of thing, you know, it's voluntary, and it's mostly just through education.
Yeah. Well, it's almost 5. I mean, it's almost 5. There's a couple more questions I'll throw at you real quick. I think they're pretty straightforward. I don't think they're putting you on the spot. Do the tribes monitor for invasive aquatic plants?
Great question. So we maintain signage on the lakes and ponds, you know, that access points, and a lot of our ponds are, like I said, they might be kind of on the small side, so it's just a canoe launch or what have you. But we put signs up about the, you know, plants and invasives, and encouraging people to remove their, you know, vegetation. We've done like courtesy inspections. If we see somebody that has vegetation on their boat or trailer, you know, we call it to their attention, just let them know that they really should remove that and why. We have gone through some of the survey, you know, trainings.
Oh yeah, like invasive plant patrol.
Yeah, but we tried a couple of different times to have like an actual go out and do inspections with a group of people, And we just haven't, for a variety of reasons, we just
Yeah.
weren't able to get it to happen.
Yeah.
So, but what does happen quite often is we'll have somebody who's a camp owner or what have you that'll bring a plant into us or call us about it. And we're like, okay, grab it, collect it, take some pictures of it, bring it to us, and we'll identify it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's
So-
definitely on your radar.
Yeah. And when we're out sampling, we're trying to pay attention to that. Like, we're not doing like formal surveys by any means, but our staff are paying attention to what's going on around them. And if they see some kind of a plant that doesn't look like something they've seen there before, we'll call attention to it.
All right. Last question. Do you have any landfill dump or cap landfills along your water bodies? I don't know if this is related to the, well, I'm not sure, but any insight into that?
So not in association with the lakes and ponds, like the trust land lakes and ponds. What we do have are places where, like you find these all over, right? Like dumped vehicles or places where people just used to dump all their stuff.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
these kind of uncontained places where a bunch of different people just dumped all their things. So we're working through our brownfields program oftentimes to go in and try to clean those places up.
Yeah.
To protect them, and then also do some soil sampling and such around them. On the reservation, the answer to that question is yes. We have the Juniper Ridge landfill is right beside the Penobscot Reservation, the
Right.
Dolby Pond, the Dolby landfill up in the West Branch, and then we also have some landfills that have closed. Like there's one in Old Town. So we're very concerned about those, and particularly with respect to PFAS.
Yeah. Well, I believe that Juniper, there was legislation to restrict out-of-state waste coming to Juniper Ridge, and I think that passed, and I'm embarrassed to say that I believe that's true. So there is some headway there for that one anyway. But well, you guys do a ton of work. I've looked at your staff list, and I know it's small, and you all do a ton of work and a ton of great work for lakes and ponds. Not only on tribal lands, but for all the people around you too. So thank you so much for putting this together and talking to our members and folks today. And for folks watching, thank you all for attending today. We will have a recording. We'll get it out to you, and we'll get it out to anybody who missed it. If you want to pass it on to others, it's available for future viewing. So thank you all for coming. And again, thank you, Dan, for being here today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. And we do have a lot of information on our website, but unfortunately it's under construction and being redesigned, and a lot of the links and resources that we had are no longer on there. So I have to work on getting all that stuff back on there with our IT staff. So
Yeah.
hopefully sometime soon it'll be back.
All right. Well, so people can keep an eye on it.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks again, everybody. Thank you, Dan.
Take care. Thank you.
Have a good day. Bye.